Good afternoon. The record, Lisa McLean, Legislative and Policy Manager, and Chair, Vice Chair, Commissioners, ex officios. We're here discussing tab 5, which is a petition submitted by Vicki Christopherson representing Maverick Gaming of Kirkland, Washington. I think we're all familiar with this petition. I won't go over the great detail that's here, but I will highlight that in April, we refiled language at your request for increasing the wagering limit, not from 300 to 500, but rather from 300 to 400. At that time, we announced the public hearing for today. Since then, we have received letters from the tribes and WIGA and an email, all in opposition to the petition. And we inserted some more historical and factual information into the record, which I can discuss if asked. I would say that we're here. Staff, your options today are to take final action on the petition after having a public hearing. Also, while we wrote here, I should have written that you could actually hold it over for more discussion, or you could deny the petition in writing. I can remain here for a few seconds for any questions that you might have on this petition to me.
Think we have any questions for Lisa? Thank you, Lisa.
Could I just ask one quick question? At some point, will legal counsel or someone else address the concerns outlined in the Kalispell letter regarding compliance with the RCW on primary use being food and beverage?
So I am happy. Hello, this is AAG Suzanne Becker. I have spoken with the commissioners individually, and I'm happy. I think we could take a short break if we wanted, so that I could also do the same with you. But generally, legal advice is not given in open meeting unless the commission has taken a vote to waive any such legal advice.
Got it. Thank you. Madam Chair, if that's already been done with individual members, I wouldn't want to hold things up just for my clarification.
If you want to, it's totally fine. It's not. If you wanted to speak with, want to take a break? Yeah. It's up to. I'll leave it up to Representative Root, but if you would like to, you are more than welcome to do that.
Okay. Would it take more than 1 or 2 minutes?
We will clear the room, and yeah, probably take. We'll need at least.
I'm sorry. Let's not do that because I'm not a voting member for this purpose anyway, and so let's move on.
All right. Very good.
I'm happy to address any questions afterwards, and I'm always available by email as well.
Thank you.
All right. Are there any other questions or comments from commissioners or ex officios? Okay.
Commissioner Lawson.
Oh, Commissioner Lawson.
Thank you. I know that I spoke extensively on this topic at our April meeting, but I still have thoughts on this. Again, after reading through the materials, the additions to the materials, and going back through my comments, I just wanted to reiterate some of the things that I said in April. So really, I don't believe it was the intent of the legislature to move house paint card rooms past being just a mere social pastime, as outlined in RCW 9.46010. Gambling is only authorized as a commercial stimulant for a business that is primarily engaged in food and beverage. And while we, as an administrative body in the Gambling Commission, have authority to set wager limits, we have to do so within the framework of what the legislature has set out for us in the statutes. When the legislature authorized house bank card rooms, they authorized them in the existing framework for pull tabs and punch boards and social card games as a commercial stimulant to a business that's primarily engaged in food and beverage. What's happened, however, through successive increases to wager limits, is that that business model has flipped. So it's no longer that the business is primarily engaged in food and beverage, is that they are primarily engaged in the business of gambling, and that food and beverage is secondary or even incidental to their casino business. And we know that simply through the statements made by the petitioner over the course of the last year, as well as statements that are in the record from prior consideration of increases to wager limits, where petitioner in this round has said that if they don't have increased wager limits, they will have to raise food and beverage prices, which indicates that they are keeping their food and beverage prices artificially low. Or we have testimony from a house bank card room operator in 2012, where he specifically said that he offers a $2 or $5 menu for his poker players when those items would normally be 2 to 3 times as much money. So really, the whole business model has been flipped in a way that I don't believe the legislature ever intended to have happen, where the food and beverage now is secondary or even incidental to the gambling business and is actually being subsidized by the gambling business. If the legislature had meant for house bank card rooms to operate in this way, they would have done so. They would have legislated so that there was some other statutory framework for house bank card rooms. But that's not what they did here. They placed house bank card rooms in the same category as punch boards and pull tabs and other social card games under RCW 9.460325, which says that a business can have social card games such as punch boards and pull tabs and house bank card rooms if the business is primarily engaged in food and beverage. But what this process has shown us is that the house bank card rooms are no longer primarily engaged in a food and beverage business. So when we, as a commission, consider whether to increase wager limits, we have to honor the legislative pronouncements in the RCW from the legislature and the provisions of the RCW. This request doesn't do that. Rather, it exacerbates the existing departure from the legislature's intent. Expressed in the legislature's authorization of the commission to set rates and rules is the requirement that these rates and rules be consistent with the purpose and intent of the statutes. And here, the wager limit increase, which exacerbates the promotion of gambling over the offering of food and beverage, is not consistent with the statutory language or the intent of the legislature and should not be granted. I think that we as a commission need to put a pause and hold off on any future or this current actually wager limit increase to allow the house bank card rooms to come into compliance with the statutory framework with which they exist, and they've been authorized by the legislature. Again, it's been said time and time again, when this was authorized in 1997, the original wager limit was $25, and there was a limit of 15 tables to a card room. That would certainly have kept the house bank card rooms within the realm of primarily being engaged in the business of food and beverage, and would have kept that wagering activity as a social pastime that is for amusement and rather than for profit, which is also part of the legislative declaration in 9.46010. But that's not what has happened over time. And so we need to put a pause, and we need to allow the house bank card rooms to come back within the system with which the framework under which they were authorized. And now I'm done.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions?
Chair. Thank you, Chair. I too have had quite a full schedule the last week, doing a fair amount of homework, reading through our packet, all 600 plus pages of it. I never knew that meeting minutes were so important until looking at 1990s material minutes, learning about the importance of this word or that comma. But I too share Commissioner Lawson's concern about some of the discrepancy here. While it is true that there have been successive periods of easing up in one section of the Gambling Act, the definition of commercial stimulant 9.46.0217, I think if there was a clear intent on the legislature's part to truly open this up and to create this what's a de facto new business model, then why wouldn't they have changed all of the references to the word primary, for example, when it comes to food and beverage and RCW 9.46.0325, where it authorizes social card games. The definition of our own scope, powers, and authority as a commission at 9.46.070, and also just the definition of social card room, which just refers back to the Gambling Commission's authority. I think at best that is a very big discrepancy. I think there's just a lack of clarity about what is going on. The impression I had talking with legislators who were active back in the 1990s was that a lot of these changes were just ad hoc, that it was just what's the harm in making this change versus a really concerted attempt at opening up this framework. And in the absence of real clarity as to any hypothetical desire for change, ultimately our authority and I think our reason for being comes back to our legislative declaration, which is literally the statement of the legislature's intent of 9.46010, where it describes how all things being equal, that while we're reconciling regulation on gambling with individual freedoms, freedom of the press, and so forth, that when in doubt, gambling should be more for amusement rather than for profit. And that's clearly not where we're at right now with the de facto status quo. So I too think that this has just gotten to the point where there needs to be significantly more clarity from the lawmakers on this issue. So I definitely respect the amount of work that went into the initial proposal, as well as Commissioner Sizemore's amendment. I definitely respect the work that went into there and the thoughtfulness behind all this, and to everyone who's been submitting information and public comment, but I myself respectfully will be voting against this amendment.
Thank you.
So I have a couple questions for staff. First of all, I heard the sense that we need clarity from lawmakers. Is there any way to get clarity from lawmakers about what the intent was or is?
I'm not certain quite how to phrase this, but probably not. Generally, if there is a question of legislative intent that is raised in a challenge to the rule, then the court will look to the legislative history behind the rule. And so everything is already in the public sphere to that extent. So that's really where we're limited.
So you advise us, is the intent of the legislate of what is the intent clear as to what it was that the legislature meant with regard to this rule?
Well, to the extent you're asking for my legal opinion, I'm happy to take a break and we can discuss further. Beyond that, I think that you have the arguments that have been sort of given to you, both for and against this particular interpretation. Yes.
Yes. Yes,
Okay.
thank you.
We're going to go to executive session. I don't know.
An executive session because litigation has been threatened over this rule. So we will be discussing that particular litigation in this executive session.
Okay, let's do 20 minutes because we need to send the meeting makers out, clear the room, clear the.
Okay, so they're all leaving, right?
Yep. Okay, and for the.
Get out.
Come back.
For ex officios and commissioners that are on the, we'll be sending you a link. Or should we just use the former executive session link?
We can just use the former.
Use the prior executive session link, please.
20 minutes. We'll kind of yell in the hallway for a little longer.
Thank you.
Okay. We are extending executive session for an additional sorry, I don't think I was recording. We are extending executive session for an additional 25 minutes. Thank you.
And we're recording.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to our meeting. It is 1:39 p.m. We just got out of executive session and we are still on tab 5, wagering limits for house bank card games. I'm going to open it back up to commissioners ex officios if there's any additional comments there first. Not we hand. Really, is someone's hand raised? Or it's not? Okay. Then we will go into public comment at this time. Is there any public comments? Please come to the podium, say your name and who you're with.
I need just a second, please.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Right there.
Freeze. Red light, green light.
My team's just closed, sorry.
All right, Madam Chair.
Hold on.
Having technical difficulties.
You may go, Victor.
All right, Madam Chair, Commissioners, ex officios.
No, we got,
Oh.
we got,
Wait, but does chair need to restart the meeting on the
No.
record? We got
we
that?
got.
Okay.
And staff. My name is Victor Mena, and I'm president of MT&M Gaming, which is the owner of the New Phoenix Last Frontier in the center of Washington. I understand the complexity of what's being discussed is rather lengthy, and I know it's a lot of history. I've been in the industry since 2001, and my recollection of what's taken place today hasn't been raised as an issue since that time when I've been dealing with this commission. Okay, I do respectfully don't agree with the determination of what the interpretation is of the license standard, the primary language. To me, what it's stating is that the business must first be engaged in the sale of food and beverage to be able to qualify for this gambling enhancement. That's my interpretation. Okay, obviously legal probably has a different way of looking at it. I don't know that. Hasn't been brought to the record yet. But the way I read the language from a strict interpretation of the language, that's what it seems to me. As far as the other pieces to it, I would like to bring up a couple of things that I think we get lost in our industry as far as some of the benefits that we do provide as a business. So for instance, my two businesses reside in a very small town of the center of Washington. And I think that similar to other types of businesses in our industry, meaning gambling, our casino provides a huge resource to that city to be able to provide services and other functionalities to its citizens. The center of Washington is roughly 4,500 people. The card rooms probably are somewhere in the 37th percentile of its city budget. What we're trying to do, obviously, is stay engaged in business to be able to provide, and we do provide for services. So the taxes that we generate is $1 million a year. It's not a non-material number when you start to look at the contribution that's being made by these two businesses. So I just wanted to raise that topic as well when we start to look at what the impacts are. In the last 6 months, we've seen a 9+% increase in our minimum wage, which is probably close to $325,000 of impact for us in a year. We're going to see another 4 to 4.5% increase in minimum wage come the CPI look back in August, because that's what I'm guessing the look back will say in September when they take a look at the August CPI for the state of Washington, which right now is running higher than the rest of the national average. So there's going to be another chunk of money that will leave these properties. And I do believe that part of what we're asking for is to maintain what we are trying to build and promote with our employees as well as our cities. It is a viable business, and it does provide necessary services as well. And I just think sometimes that does get lost. As far as the rest of, the arguments, I mean, they can be far and wide, but I just want to look at it from the most simplistic piece, which is we're looking to offset the increases that are coming down the pipe. And CPI is going to be every year. And I do know that we're not going to see wager limit increases every year. We haven't seen one since 2008. So I would appreciate the commissioners taking all that into consideration. Is there any questions?
Hi, Victor, welcome back. So you're for or against?
I am for the wager limit increase of going to $400.
And is your rationale to try to level the playing field with tribal casinos?
No, there's no such thought in my mind. I personally feel that tribal gaming is a necessary entity in the state of Washington. It provides a lot of service for the people that they serve. So I don't see that. I don't see that threat from our business to theirs. I just don't. The bulk of their business is in VLTs, and quite frankly, that's not anything that we have.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Victor. Any other public comments?
First of all, I want to thank for taking the time to listen to me. My name is Franklin Roy. I work at Roman Casino in Skyway. I've been in this industry for about 20 plus years, right? I'm not here to state any numbers, anything. I'm just giving my personal opinion on this. When I first came into this industry, I didn't know anything about gambling, right? But 20 years later, I'm happy I made that choice. Why? Because I've been able to provide through this industry to my family, not only through money, but it's giving me the flexibility to spend time with my kids, working only one job, which probably now is really hard to sustain a family with only one job, right? And my wife stays home, so I'm the only income to that house. But like I'm saying, I saw this picture outside that what it says that fathers are the number one source or influence to the kids, right? And I really believe that. I believe that if we spend more time with our kids, our communities can be better, right? And that's how I feel about this. So I think you guys hold a great power if you guys allow mini casinos to increase the limit. Not only because my casino, not my casino, my work will stay open, but also a lot of my coworkers are going to be able to provide to their family as well. And I've seen that Maverick, not only as an organization to make money from people, but I also seen that through their programs, they've been helping the community in South Seattle through the lunch programs, to the back to school programs, and so many others that they do throughout the year. So that's all I have to say. Just consider this, not only for the money wise, like Victor said, we're not here to compete with other people. We'll keep making an impact in South Seattle, throughout the Washington state. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. Thank you for giving me this time to speak. My name is Richard Rivera. I live in Seattle. I'm the general manager at Goldie's Casino in Shoreline. I've been in the house bank card room industry since 2000, 23 years. I've started out as a dealer, and when Maverick came in, they gave me an opportunity to be promoted and grow in the industry. They've been able, because of the opportunities Maverick's given me, I've been able to buy a home in Seattle. And with this increase in the limit wages, it'll help us generate more revenue for the cities and our business, and we'll be able to pay other managers, floor supervisors, shift managers a livable wage. And a lot of feedback I get from our customers is they would like to see that. We hear about a lot of feedback from them. And like the previous before me, our company, we have our Maverick Cares where we do the Christmas dinners, Thanksgiving meals, back to school, all that stuff. We are really proactive in training our teams on problem gaming. We do training several times a year, new hires, all that stuff. That's a big thing for us to make sure that we recognize and know when somebody may have a problem. But for the most part, I think with the increase, Maverick will be able to continue to pay their team members and managers a wage that they'll be able to live in Seattle area, and not have to have 2 or 3 jobs at a time. So that's pretty much it. Do you have any questions or anything? No. All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Good afternoon, Commissioner. My name is Hai, and I'm currently a shift manager at Macau Casino Lakewood. Even though I have not been with the company long, I've been there for about a year-ish. The company did give me the opportunity from starting out as just a floor supervisor, and now I am currently a shift manager. Previously, I was in the automotive industry. I got injured and lost my job, so this is a grading starting point for me. As a company provider, I did not need some sort of education, anything like that, where I would have to work at McDonald's where we work minimum wage. So the company, it's a great company where a normal person like me can start all over again. As far as, like everybody see, we fighting with inflation, prices, everything gone up, rent, my house, the rent go up, even milk for my kids gone up. So we are struggling with just making, enough money for having a livable wage. So with the limit increase, the company have a chance to make more money. That's give us the chance to get the raises so we can, take care of our family. And that's it.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Mark Hawkinson. I go by Hawk. I live in Mount Lake Terrace, Washington. I've been a resident of this beautiful state my entire life. Thank you very much for the opportunity to come down here and voice my opinion on this matter. I've been a dealer in these card rooms since 2001. And in that time, I've seen many things come and go, many players come and go. I feel it's important for our wagers to be able to go up another $100 based on the fact that they haven't moved in 14 years. We've had the same limits for the last 14 years. Our players want it. Me, as selfishly, I would love that. I make a minimum wage my entire life plus tips. And as costs go up, it would be advantageous if I was able to get a little bit more in tips along the way. I love being a dealer. Like I said, I've done it my whole adult life. Earlier, we had heard this clarity from the lawmakers on the written message that of how this was to be treated as a let me rephrase that. Sorry about that. When we were talking about the clarity from the lawmakers, I don't believe they would be thinking about the increase of everything, inflation, the fact that we pay $5 for a gallon of gas now, but yet we're still gonna be sitting at the same amount financially with the wagers. So anyway, I want to thank you for listening to me here and giving us the opportunity, and hopefully we can get that pressed up.
Hi,
Yeah.
thanks
Yeah.
for coming up. Can you talk, you've got a lot of experience at the table level, which I appreciate. Can you talk a little bit about like what problem gambling, kind of identifying somebody with problem gambling and kind of a correlation between working at a table where you just have a bunch of guys on a bachelor party out there at $5 a hand versus having a table of people that are, currently playing kind of max wagers at 300. How does that kind of work?
Well, there's a fine line right there. You don't want just to assume somebody wants help. The minute, I've had this happen to me before on the table, the minute somebody mentions the fact that, oh, maybe I shouldn't be gambling this much, I will let them know that there's ways that we can help them. I will let the supervisor know what's going on. I will let them know that there's a phone number they can call. We get trained on this yearly. We take courses on recognizing problem gambling and things to do, and help out when that happens. But, let me just say this. This wager increase is not going to affect the majority of our players. There's only a small amount of players that are willing to go to that level. So it's not going to be those guys that are out there betting $5 a hand, bachelor party, whooping it up and all that stuff. But it's what the higher players really want. They want it. They've been wanting it for a long time, and I believe it's time to do that.
Thank you for answering.
Thank you so much.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Tony Johns. I've spoken a few times on this issue in the past. I'm the general manager of Chips Casino in Lakewood and now Great American Casino and Macau Casino in Lakewood. The topic of, kind of touching on what Victor was saying, the topic of restaurant compared to casino, I've been in the industry since 1998. I've never heard that brought up before until this particular subject came up. Not entirely sure. I wasn't there, and I'm not fully informed on exactly what was said with the legislature back then. What I do know is we've been operating the way we've been operating for going on 25 years while I've been in the industry. And to hear comments like, we just need to get back to, when the industry gets back to what it was intended, what I hear when I hear that is just accept the layoffs, accept those employees that you're going to have to lay off, and reduce your size. That's what I hear as somebody who's been in this industry for 25 years, as an operator of the casinos. And that scares me. I'm already scared for my employees because of the financial impacts that we're facing with inflation, with the increases in minimum wage. I can tell you without exception, every time minimum wage goes up, all the employees who aren't making minimum wage come to me and say, so do we get a raise too? And I wish I could give them one, but unfortunately I can't, because all the minimum wage people, which is the majority of our dealers, they all got raises, and now I can't afford to give other people raises, right? Because the income coming into the casino has leveled out. We've been sitting on our current wager limits for 14 years. And I can't imagine the legislatures considered that at the time, or if or that's what their intention was to keep us at a static amount for 14 years. You brought up problem gambling. I'd like to touch on that. It's something that I'm not afraid to discuss in this industry. I think it's something that we shouldn't be afraid to discuss. I think it's something that we should discuss head on. I started out in security in this industry, worked every position. I've been in security, I've been in surveillance, I've been a dealer, I've been a floor supervisor, a shift manager, and now a general manager and a casino manager. I've dealt with so many customers over the years that I identified as potentially having problems. And I think one of the things that gets lost in this conversation is we're human beings. I'm a human being. I care, right? I'm not just some machine generating profit, right? When you have a person in front of you and you recognize it, you address it. And I don't know anyone in my industry that doesn't feel that way. And so we're very conscious of it in this industry. And Maverick Gaming has a very extensive training program on how to handle that. And I feel like we as an industry really, I guess just what I put is we care a lot about it. And I get sometimes the sense that that's not the perception. And I feel like maybe as an industry, we could do better just to make sure people know that, hear from the people at the ground level, and that we understand. So that's all I have on that topic. If you have any questions, I'm happy to take them. No? Okay, thank you for your time.
Thank you. Oh, Representative Clova, do you have your hand up?
Yes, actually, I was a little bit late in getting it up there. So if the gentleman might be imposed upon to come back up to the podium there for a moment.
Yes.
And yes, thank you. Well, I appreciate the concerns that you demonstrated, and I, problem gambling is deep in my heart. But I'm interested to know, kind of with the background that you have. I'm going to get to a question, but I want to start out with, in the past, when rates, wagering limits have been raised, there was a very deliberative process, and we saw it in our packet about how, for instance, in 2009, you may remember they wanted to increase the limits for Texas Hold'em. And so there was a work group, and then the commission initiated some rulemaking in 2010 for a pilot program to see what was going to be the impact on the sales of food and beverage. And they determined, that seemed like that was going to be an appropriate thing. And lots of folks came in and testified, and were talking about how, giving evidence about how when various increases or additions of card games like Baccarat were introduced, that they had increases in their food and beverage rates. And it's just such a contrast to me now that we don't hear a thing about that. And so I'm wondering, in addition to all of the other things that you have been talking about, because you're a GM, could you speak to what you would see happening, what you foresee or anticipate happening with the food and beverage numbers on that side of the house?
Well, I can tell you, I'm not entirely sure if the current interpretation of what the legislature's intent back then is sort of as a reference to percentage of sales, or if it, I can tell you 100% of my customers that walk in the door take advantage of my restaurant services. 100% of them. I don't have a single customer that just walks in and doesn't drink or eat. So from my perspective as an operator, we are still as much a restaurant as we are a casino. I heard the comment made that the food and beverage sales is much lower as a result of the fact that we're a casino, I would encourage that person to look at my menu prices because they've skyrocketed in the last 12 months. And I can tell you that it's comparable to a lot of restaurants currently out there because we can't afford not to. It's the costs to operate have just skyrocketed. So to answer your question, like I said, from my perspective, 100% of my customers utilize our restaurant services. It is a necessary financial part of our operations, and they both go hand in hand, quite frankly. I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, so in bringing in customers or appealing to the customers you already have who would like to bet more money, you're thinking that if they bet more money, they will also buy more food or like buy more food at the higher prices. That's kind of what you're anticipating.
I don't know that you can attach the two, right? It's
well, they have in the past. That's why I asked.
Oh, I see. Well, I can just tell you that in order for us to continue to operate with the staffing levels we're currently operating at, we have to see some increase in our betting limits in order to stay in line with inflation and increased costs. And if I were to charge even more for the food and go that direction, people would laugh at my menu, quite frankly, because we're already higher than we've been in a year and comparable to what current restaurants are at, which are also high. So I guess the point is that's where we see an opportunity to increase our revenues to stay with the inflating cost of operating.
Thank you. I appreciate the extra effort.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Well, my name is Eric Winterotha. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. I live in Linwood, Washington. I've been a table games dealer for approximately 20 years now. I currently work at Goldie's in Shoreline. So I've seen all kinds of things in 20 years. The last time, so when I started, we had $100 table limits. Within a couple of years, it became, you could have 2 tables operated at $200 maximum if you let surveillance know. Then it was $200 for everything. And then literally 3 years after that, it was $300. And that was 2009. So we've been operating at those same rates for 14 years and nothing's changed, which is fine. We got mini baccarat. So the drop went way up because those people like to put a lot of money into that game. Sometimes they win big and sometimes they lose big, but it's very variable and it's very flexible. So we serve the customer base of the local community, basically. People don't drive half an hour to come to our place. So in order to be successful, we have to provide great customer service and we have to treat our customers like they're somebody that we know and our friend, and they know us. They know our face, they know our names, we know their names, they know the servers, they know the floors, they know the shift managers, they know the bartenders, they know what drink they want, they know what food they want to order. We know how they want their chips when they buy in. We know what kind of change they want. We know everything about them. It's very communal to them. Some of them, I think, just come there because they want to see the people that they see all the time. And unfortunately, we've had to close a number of tables and send people home because we're facing the hard labor cap at this point. And that's sad because I've worked with these people for 15 years at Goldie's, and most of them are decent people that are just trying to provide for their family. And all of us, go out of our way to try to make it as successful as possible. It's not always possible, but everybody's there trying. I don't think anybody that shows up to work doesn't try. And it's gotten really difficult and frustrating and sad. And, it's been a long time in this business, and I feel fortunate because it's afforded me the ability to not be a burden on society and pay my own way. I bought a house about 10 years ago. I have a mortgage. I have, family, medical issues, all that kind of stuff. And it's really frustrating and difficult. And then we have players asking us questions like, what's going on? And no, and we don't have any answers for you. And then we have other ones that would like to bet more, even though they're not allowed to. No, this is the most you can, it's okay. You know, I understand. We can help you. So it's very difficult to provide the level of customer service that we need to, and to help support all of these people. We get trained for problem gambling, we get trained for self-exclusion, we get trained for all kinds of things. And we go out of our way, you know, to cut somebody off if they had too much to drink. We don't want people gambling when they're overserved. You know, all of these things that we do, we try to the best to serve our community. And I'm really hopeful that you would be able to increase the table limits even by $100, just so they have the opportunity to provide the service level that they're asking for. Questions? Okay, thank you for your time.
Thank you. Good afternoon, commissioners and ex officios. I'm Vicki Christopherson, petitioner in this fabulous rulemaking that we've been working on now for over a year. And I wanted to first just thank the staff and the commissioners, ex officios, for all the time and thoughtful consideration that's gone into this. I know that it is apparent to me that the commissioners and everybody involved in the commission take your role very seriously. And we appreciate that, because we too take seriously the role we play in our communities and as business owners in the community. We're asking for support for this modest adjustment that is appropriate and consistent with the commission's authority as stated in the statute. And I just want to do a little bit of a reset back to where we were a little over a year ago and sort of our perspective on this. So I think everybody knows card rooms have been active business participant in this state since the 1970s. And since that time, the structure has been adjusted by the legislature several times. Some of those things being allowing 15 tables instead of 5, allowing house bank card rooms instead of just social card rooms, and periodic adjustments here at the commission to wager limits to account for changing economic conditions. The card room business model is unique. It's only 15 tables. If you haven't been into a card room, it's a very small space, kind of like the room we're in here. It is not a big space. Might be a tiny restaurant over there that you kind of move in and out, and the bar, and sometimes TVs to watch sports on, and in some cases, some kiosks for horse racing. But they're all very small, local, neighborhood-focused folks. 90% of our customers come from within 3 miles of our locations. They are in many ways the local pancake house, the local Cheers bar. And it is true, people are eating, drinking, socializing, and playing card games. And those things coexist together in this business model, and has been a good, steady business with lots of great jobs over the years. Each card room employs around 100 Washingtonians. That includes dealers, cooks, dishwashers, servers, security, janitors, et cetera, et cetera. And the card rooms are heavily regulated, not just by the Gambling Commission, but also by the Liquor and Cannabis Board and by LNI and all the other business regulations that exist in this state. Card rooms support the local economy. It's not often commented, but we really need to make sure people remember that the statute in Washington state authorizes local jurisdictions, the cities that we live in, or the unincorporated counties, to levy a tax on gambling activities. In most jurisdictions, that's around 10%. And as was stated before, those revenues go to important services those cities provide. We hear from mayors and city council people all the time that that revenue helps support public safety and services that the city needs to provide. We also pay, obviously, B&O and all of the other taxes that businesses pay. Over the past few decades, this commission has been asked a few times to consider adjusting card room wager limits. And multiple times that's occurred. The last time the wager limits themselves broadly were increased was in 2009.
The Texas Hold'em small increase was actually in 2011, and that was separate from the broader discussion around wager limits for card rooms. So it has been 14 years since the card room wager limit was raised. I just went and did a little research. So in 2009, minimum wage was $8.55. Today, it's anywhere between $15 and $20. Tukwila, we're up at $19 right now. That's a pretty dramatic increase in just our wage costs today. In 2009, a Big Mac was $3.58. Today, it's $5.81, an increase of 62% over that 14 years. A gallon of gas, 2009, we all feel that. I got to stop by the gas station on my way out of here, was $2.50. Today, it's over $5 in the state of Washington. You know, we had some criticism saying, well, we should only look at the CPI when we look at whether the economic impact warrants a $400 increase. Well, the fact is the CPI is one factor. And all of these other factors that we discuss, minimum wages, supply chain issues, all of the other pieces, we're also competing for workers right now. I don't know any of my clients, other clients, anybody look around who's not looking for workers right now. We are competing in a very heavily competitive worker market. For a card room, the lines of business stimulate each other. And there's been a lot of discussion here about what is supposed to be the primary business. And I just would argue that it was acknowledged in 2007 by the Gambling Commission itself when it adopted a rule change allowing food and beverage to be considered a stimulant for gambling activities and therefore excluded from the gambling revenues. So we have kind of this long discussion about what is the stimulant, what is not. The fact is this business model exists with both and they are reliant on each other. We can't have one without the other. People want to go play cards, they want to have a beer or a Diet Coke, and they want to have a burger. It's part of the whole thing. People that go to a card room for a burger and a Diet Coke most times want to play cards too. That's why they're going there. So really, I think, you know, when we think about the history, the fact is that that's just the reality of the business. The petition, which I brought forward over a year ago, we believe has been refined appropriately. And we believe it seeks to make a modest adjustment that's appropriate with the economic conditions that we currently exist in. And I've heard the criticism that somehow card rooms are operating today running afoul of the letter of the law. And I just have to categorically and respectfully disagree with that. This request simply reflects the difference in costs that these Washington state businesses are facing. And in fact, it's also reflected in the fee increases that the agency itself embarked on because of those very same economic pressures that we're facing. There's only so much that a business can raise certain prices. There's only so far you can raise the food prices before you have a negative impact on people coming into your business. We have to have the balance here. And in 14 years with no change, what we have is we're in an outsized situation and we need to have some modest adjustment so that we can continue to provide these jobs and provide this option in our communities. I'm asking you to make this adjustment, which is within the commission's statutory authority and which the commission has done multiple times under the current statutory construction. The statute as it exists today, you voted to, or not you, previous commissions voted to increase the wager limits under the current statutory construction 14 years ago with no change to that statute since. So it's entirely appropriate to do it again today. Food and beverage increases are topping 10% right now. We don't have any more room there. We just don't. And so we'd ask you to please consider moving this forward today. And again, I just have to say again, how much we appreciate and respect the work of the commission and appreciate and respect the deliberation that's gone into this. I've never seen a rule packet with 350 pages in it. So I just have to say that's incredible. And Lisa has put a lot of work into all of that material. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
It's a long day. Madam Chair, Commissioners, ex officios, ladies and gentlemen. I was hoping not to follow Vicky so I could sound impressive, but hold on. Barry Murray, I'm representing Imperial Palace Casino, which is currently in Auburn, and we're going to be moving into the Tukwila jurisdiction as well. You know, I just wanted to echo some of the things that have already been said, which is I agree with Victor's interpretation of how the structure and in addition to the synergy of the gaming and the food and beverage together. I also, you know, we're under enormous pressure, obviously cost of goods, minimum wage. As Vicky alluded to, it's 19 in Tukwila, which we're moving into, and it's going to adjust again. So it's going to be 20 in another year or so. So I, you know, just wanted to kind of harken back to the local jurisdictions, which we touched on. You know, Auburn, I've been there since '09 when it was Iron Horse Casino, prior to that. And eventually I got invited to the chamber. I got on the board of directors. I was the chair of the board of directors. Worked a lot with the mayor, Mayor Nancy Backus, so I got they're just so thankful. You know, we're providing 180 jobs locally there. And without that, given, you know, the job market there, it would be quite the hole. And, you know, these are high paying jobs, $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 jobs. We're hiring about 200 people for Tukwila. So we're going to add to that at the Ramada property in West Valley. And again, just trying to contribute to the community along the way, whether that be with charity functions. I'm involved with government affairs already with the chamber in Tukwila South Sound Chamber, which I'll continue to, I just had my first meeting talking about additional minimum wage increases in places like of our industry right now. And I just wanted to come up and say that I'm in support of this raising from 300 to 400. And I think it's a modest step that could assist us in covering some of these additional costs that we're inevitably facing on a day-to-day basis. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, Commissioners, ex officios. Luke Esser testifying on behalf of the Kalispel Tribe of Indians, and the Vice Chair of our tribe, Kurt Holmes, submitted a letter which was included in your packet, so I won't reiterate all of that material. I did want to shortly draw the Commission's attention back to the enabling statute, the important language of RCW 946-070 sub 2 that requires that these businesses be primarily engaged in the selling of items of food and drink for consumption on the premises. And I mention that because I know there's a whole lot of other factors that you're considering. But again, I want to draw your attention back that the enabling statute is the foundation for all of your activities as a commission, that everything you do has to be authorized by the legislature, which has given you important responsibilities, but has also set boundaries and limits on the actions you can take. And we believe that those boundaries will be gone beyond if you adopt this particular rule petition. A couple of arguments I wanted to respond to that I've heard recently. The first one is a sense that because this issue hasn't been raised in the past, that it's not necessary for you to consider it this time around. And I would suggest to you that in every decision you make, you must consider whether the enabling statute grants you the authority to make that particular decision. And it's irrelevant whether previous commissions might have made an oversight and didn't take a close enough look at their authorizing language or not. that it doesn't change the responsibility for the commission in every decision you make going forward. Second argument I wanted to address was the argument that the primarily engaged language should only be considered the first time an applicant applies for a license. And there's a rule that a statute shouldn't be read in a way that leads to preposterous results. And the executive director of our casino operations has come up with a hypothetical that I think points out the flaw in that reasoning, is that someone could come to you with a hot dog stand and apply for a gaming license, get the gaming license, close the hot dog stand, and simply operate as a gaming operation entirely going forward, which I think we all would agree is a preposterous result, but would be entirely in line with that particular interpretation we're hearing from some people, that you should only consider the primarily engaged language one time and then avert your eyes and henceforward never look at whether they're primarily engaged or not. And we wanted to point out what preposterous results that would lead to. There's been a lot of discussion of legislative intent, and we wanted to point out that if the language of the legislation is clear, that language defines legislative intent. Primarily engaged is the language that the legislature set forth in the statute, and that's the language that should be utilized by this commission in their decision making. As the letter from Vice Chairman Holmes says, if you adopt this rule petition, you will be rendering that particular language meaningless. In effect, you will be rewriting the legislation to remove the language about primarily engaged if you adopt this rule petition, because you will be ignoring it entirely. For these reasons, we encourage you to take a close look at 946-070 sub 2, your authorizing legislation. And if you do, we're confident you will see that there is not the lawful authority to grant this rule petition. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Do you have anyone online? Please. Thank you, everyone, for that. Oh, yes.
For the record, is there any email?
No public comment.
No public comments submitted. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for that lively discussion. One's hand raised. It's just someone coming in.
No, it's just someone in the lobby.
Got it. All right. Okay. Not hearing any additional comments, so I think we're ready for a motion.
So, Madam Chair, for the purposes of discussion, I move that we take final action on the proposed changes to take effect 31 days after filing with the code revisor. And may I speak?
Yes.
Very briefly, Madam Chair, I want to say that this is the most complex, and I have to say contentious issue I faced as a commissioner. I've been here since 2013, I think. And it's very divisive. Something we need a lot less of these days is divisiveness, and this has been very divisive. And it's forced the commissioners to have to make a choice that would be viewed on either side as being hostile. I heard that today from a proponent of their position, that it would be viewed, that a certain vote would be viewed as hostile. So it's divisive, and it's hard on us because, like someone said, we're human beings. We have no ill intent toward the card rooms or toward the tribes. We want to make decisions that are based on our values, that are based on us being good people. And this is a difficult decision. So I'm going to be supporting the motion today because, and I want to say that I think that arguments on both sides are very compelling. When I listen to my friends from the tribal community talk about their perspective, they are compelling. Who knows whether or not the Gambling Commission in years gone by screwed up? I mean, maybe they did. I don't know. And when I listen to my friends from the card rooms come forward and talk about the argument about the need for more revenue because of inflation, and here we are raising their fees, and the cost of them doing business is going up tremendously as it is everywhere, it makes sense that we should do this for them. So it's very difficult to make the decision because the legislation is so vague. I mean, we don't know what they meant. And there are competing arguments about what this word primarily means. I don't know what they meant. And I appreciate your opinion if you feel certain that you know what they meant, but I don't know that you really know that. So I don't know. So really, I don't know. So I think maybe we ought to vote for this, and maybe this is just something, it's the first time I've ever said this here, that needs to go to the courts. Maybe they know. Bring it to the record. So, Madam Chair, I plan on supporting the motion today, but I'm going to tell you that this is really the toughest vote for the reasons I just stated.
So you made a motion though, right?
I did. I made a motion to approve, move forward.
I'll second that. It's been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion?
Sure. Yeah, very compelling, conversations, not only today, but over the past year plus. And I mean, I go back to a point in time, 4, 5, 6 years ago when there was a petition to increase to 500. And, at the time, through a lot of conversations, a lot of consideration of, where we were at the time and what had gone on in the past, that petition was withdrawn. And then I think, roll around to last year, petition is reintroduced. And yeah, the initial petition had a lot of things that I wasn't comfortable with. And everything from some of the terms that they proposed to some of the rationale that was suggested. But I mean, in my opinion, once we've, not my opinion, I think in actuality, once we accept a rule petition, then it becomes our petition. We're then in charge of making a determination of what happens to that petition, what language ends up being in. And going through the process, I think limiting it to 400, removing any discussion of high limit areas and things like that, have made this, I think, the proper step forward. And those of you that regularly attend or jump on online probably heard me 3, 4, 5 months ago raise the concern about primarily engaged. And primarily engaged, if in fact the Kalispell position is accurate, then yeah, I understand the concerns. But if primarily concerned means what I believe it means in this circumstance, then I think that the way that the Gambling Commission's been operating for quite some time, arguably when someone is applying for a gambling license and they put in their application and the staff is evaluating it, if their primary business at the time before they do any gaming is renting kayaks or running a law firm, they can't have a card room. That's very clear. But if at the time they are primarily engaged in food and beverage, then they would qualify. So the hot dog stand example is interesting, except for the fact that while we don't and have not for, I believe, over 20 years, evaluated whether food and beverage was more than half of total revenues, we do ensure that those entities continue to be food and beverage providers. So I believe that, argument is certainly that, yes, if we've screwed up all along, then we're screwing up now. So, and there's no disputing that. But I think it's very compelling that the legislature intended these neighborhood casinos to exist, to come around and to not have to try to be relevant businesses with both arms behind their back. So I am certainly, I will be supportive of the rule as proposed. And I believe that we have the rationale and the legislative authority to make that decision.
Thank you. So it has been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. All those opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
All right, motion passes 3-2.